Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you I don't know, I'm Joan Gable, and I'm the Dean of the Trulaske College of Business, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here today for our Vaughn Executive in Residence Lecture. Before we begin, as usual, please turn off your cell phones off because they'll interfere with the microphone. So I'm watching you all reach in your pockets and turn them off. Thank you. And then please stay until the completion, which includes the Q&A portion of the program. As many of you know from previous experiences, it's often the Q&A that's the best part. So I really strongly encourage you to stay. In fact, insist that you stay all the way through to the end. So one of the strategic priorities of the Trulaske College of Business is to make sure we give you all the opportunity for and benefit of collaboration between what we do here in Cornell Hall and industry experts and leaders. We think this really equips you much better for success when you graduate. And we think that our partners outside of Cornell Hall serve a really important role in your preparation and readiness for the real world. We like to bring in speakers who can provide you a variety of perspectives and opportunities, knowledge about trends, issues, practice, how to turn challenges into opportunities, how to give you sound advice, words of wisdom, sometimes examples, war stories. I'm laughing because I think that's particularly poignant today. Each path to success is different and offers new insights and perspectives, and I think we have a particular opportunity today to hear from someone who's not a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, but nonetheless has had an incredibly interesting leadership journey and offers you a really wonderful perspective on successful leadership right here in our backyard, and yet of an extremely important enterprise that is responsible for many things on campus for the university around the country. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to one of our campus leaders, Mr. Mike Alden, the Director of Intercollegiate Athletics at Mizzou. Mr. Alden earned 2 undergraduate degrees from the University of Evansville while a player on their football team. He also holds a master's degree in educational administration and supervision from Arizona State. Mr. Alden coached football at both the University of Evansville and at the University of Pennsylvania. Prior to joining Mizzou in 1998 as athletic director, he held a similar position at Texas State, as well as serving in senior management positions at the University of New Mexico and at Arizona State University. Since joining the Mizzou family, Mr. Alden has strived to develop a focus in intercollegiate athletics on 3 core values: academic integrity, social responsibility, and competitive intensity. And those are core values that should sound very familiar to you because they're actually very similar to what we focus on here for you in Cornell Hall. I'm pleased to report that as a result of his commitment to instilling these values in our athletics program, Mizzou currently has the #1 academic progress rate in the Big 12 and the best overall GPA in the history of the school. And I can tell you from previous experience at other universities that is really no small accomplishment. As well, Mizzou is a recipient of the NCAA Life Skills National Award in recognition of the efforts of its student athletes and staff to serve the community and experience total personal growth. Under Mr. Alden's guidance, Mizzou has enjoyed its best 3 finishes ever in the last 3 seasons in the National Association of Collegiate Directors of Athletics Directors' Cup standings, which rates each Division I program on its competitive success on all sports. As a colleague, I can attest to the value that Mr. Alden's leadership brings not only to our athletics program that you all see, but also behind the scenes to our campus community and our progress as an institution as a whole. It's a wonderful partnership between athletics and academics on this campus, a uniquely wonderful partnership. So I expect you will very much enjoy the opportunity to hear his insights on leading in dynamic times, especially the very interesting times we find ourselves in. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Mike Alden.
Thank you.
I can't do it.
Thank you. Thank you, Dean Gable. I appreciate that. Enjoy the rest of your day today. We know that you may be leaving us in a little bit as well, too. So.
All must stay, but I have to go. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Dean Gable. I appreciate that. Can you guys hear me okay? Wow. It's kind of like this. My voice is coming out. I'm going, wow. But Dean Gable is working on the search for our new dean of the law school right now. So she's actually heading there right now to be working on that. But certainly I've been blessed to be able to work with Dean Gable and also Dean Walker before Joan Gable came here from Florida State, and have had a long-time relationship with the Trulaske College of Business and with many of our faculty and our staff that are part of our team here in our college, but also throughout the entire campus. So thank you very much for allowing me to come here, and I came along with 2 other people. Sarah Baumgartner, who's right down here next to Joe. This is Sarah Baumgartner. She and I work together. And TJ Leon, he and I work together as well, too. TJ is a graduate of the University of Missouri, and he works with us in our fundraising, our development efforts. Sarah is a graduate of the University of Illinois, but we have converted her from Champaign, Illinois, clearly to Columbia, and she oversees all of our development activities for us. So before I get into not all of my comments that I wanted to make with you today, I just wanted to give you a little bit more background of myself. So, Joan was kind enough to introduce me on my bio part. I'm not going to go through each one of these lines for you. I just want you to have an idea of a little bit of who I am and who we are and who this person is here. I find it interesting. Whenever I go to hear speakers, I always hear their bio or I read this thing all about them, and it's usually about their title and where they've worked and all this other kind of stuff, which is okay. But I've always wanted to get to know a little bit more about who that person is that's talking to me. So I wanted to tell you that. I'm 53 years old. My wife's name is Rocky, like the boxer, Rocky. We have a son. His name is Jake. He's 16 years old and a junior at Rockbridge High School. And we live, you know where the football stadium is? The football stadium's right there at Stadium in Providence. We live catty corner from that football stadium. There's an older neighborhood down there here in Columbia, and we brought a 3-bedroom brick ranch home in 1998 when we moved here, and that's where we live, and it makes it really convenient for us in a lot of ways. But for us, I mean, we love living there because we're really kind of the fabric of our campus. I mean, we're on campus all the time, not just for work, but for what we do, for social activities. I think the other thing I wanted to share with you, at least, and that's a very big part of it, is I was raised by my dad. So when I'm growing up, I was actually raised by a lot of different people. There were a lot of people that had custody of me in different settings. So I went to lots of different elementary schools, and I lived with lots of different people, some that were relatives, some that weren't relatives of mine. But my father got possession of me or custody of me, when I was in 8th grade. And so my dad, who finished his sophomore year in high school, and my birth mother, who finished her freshman year in high school, my dad finally got possession of me when I was in 8th grade. And so he's really a person probably that influenced me more than anybody, more than any professor that I had at Arizona State, more than any neighbor, more than any friend, more than anyone else, and the things that he was able to teach me on what I do with my life. So that's just a little bit about me and kind of who I am and the opportunity I have to be here with you today. So I'm at Mizzou, and I've been here for 14 years. And we oversee an enterprise at the University of Missouri called an athletic program, about a $65 million a year budget, give or take some dollars here or there, depending on how you count it. But it's about $65 million. We have 192 people that work in the athletic program at Mizzou, full-time equivalency, FTE, 192. We have 505 student athletes, and we have 20 sport programs right here at Mizzou. And a lot of the things, as far as the scope of the program, is the same as when I first came here, which means we had about 130 people actually that worked here. We had 500 student athletes. We had 20 sport programs. But we had a budget of $13.7 million. So while there's been more people that we've added to the equation, we've also added some resources to the equation, too, to try to help what we're doing in athletics. Okay? I like to show this slide for all of us as we're talking here because this is who we are as an institution. Now, this is not only, hopefully not just one person's opinion. I think this would stand up for a lot of people. At the center of all of these things is us as a university. This isn't us as an athletic program. This is us as a university. And for Mizzou, what do we do? What are we trying to serve? Okay? So in the middle of all of this is our institution. Well, the number one most important thing we're trying to serve, obviously, is our students, are all of you, that are here, that are students of ours in here. But we also need to service in the research category. We have great staff. We have great faculty. We have extension services reflected in all 114 counties in the state of Missouri. We're serving the community, not only Columbia community in mid-Missouri, but communities throughout the state, throughout the country. We have to serve the entire state of Missouri and also our legislature. We deal a lot with them and a lot of other people. And obviously we have over 200,000 alums around the world. So it's a very complex organization. And you have a tremendous amount of constituencies that sometimes we don't think about. Sometimes we don't think about that always in athletics. We're thinking about, okay, how are we going to win this game? Or we're thinking about how are these kids going to be able to graduate? Or we've got an issue going on with a facility. We have an issue going on that somebody's made askew with what we're supposed to be doing at our institution. And we fail to remember sometimes that there's a much bigger cadre of people that we serve beyond intercollegiate athletics. And that's really no different, frankly, than any of our academic units on our campus, any of our staff units, any other support services that we have on campus, is that sometimes we forget that we have to be able to remember that these are the folks that we try to serve and we try to work with. Now, across all of that, that's an interesting thing about intercollegiate athletics, is it will cut across every single section of those areas that we're talking about. So in some way, shape, or form, athletics is going to impact every single area on that wheel. And it doesn't mean it's the most important thing that's happening at this institution, because it's not. It's not even close to that, right? It just happens to have a tremendous amount of influence in areas that we try to impact, and we do impact around our entire campus. So if you think about this from a business standpoint, Mizzou is a conglomerate, right? It's a $2 billion a year conglomerate. I don't know if you guys know that that's about the budget on the Mizzou campus. Betsy, am I right? About $2 billion, including the hospitals, right? So if you include the hospitals and you include our vet school and you include the law school and you include all of us and our undergraduate experiences and the enterprise of Mizzou, it's a $2 billion a year corporation, a conglomerate. And then the conglomerate has all these subsidiaries. You have, a subsidiary what might be printing services. You have a subsidiary what might be the True College of Business. You have a subsidiary what could be, construction management. There's a subsidiary called athletics. And athletics is a $65 million subsidiary of a $2 billion a year conglomerate, okay? And when you think about that, you wonder, how can this little piece, a $65 million little subsidiary, impact a $2 billion a year conglomerate? How can that happen? Well, it happens because the nature of sport cuts across things way beyond what goes on with the entire conglomerate, because it touches a lot of people. So while it may not be the most important thing, and it's not, it's about education here, we all know that. It's about research. It's about having the best faculty in the world. It's about having tremendous staff. It's about serving the state of Missouri, serving the country, serving international. It's probably the strongest advertising vehicle we have as an institution. And you can ask the people in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and they would tell you the same thing. And I guarantee you can ask the people in State College, Pennsylvania, and they will absolutely tell you that it is the biggest advertising vehicle that they have. No different than UCLA, no different than the University of Florida, no different here at Mizzou. So the question when you're going through that kind of things is, if that is the impact that a subsidiary can have on the conglomerate, what are you doing to make sure that the subsidiary is reflecting the values of the entire conglomerate, reflecting the values of Mizzou? And Joan was or Dean Gable, I should say, was very kind to be able to talk a little bit about that. And that, for us, has been very simply and very directly talked about with the core values that we try to replicate in what we do, okay? Now, if you guys go on the quad, the Francis Quadrangle, right there by the columns, right in front of the columns, there are 4 core values that we believe in here at the University of Missouri. Who has gone on the other side of the columns and seen those 4 core values? Raise your hand. Okay, a little higher so I can kind of see. Okay, so I have about a third of us in here that have seen it. Now, I don't know about the third of them that can repeat it. Who can repeat them exactly, what those 4 core values are? All right, what's your name? Josh. Where are you from, Josh? Okay, from St. Louis. All right, Josh, now we're going to all put the pressure on you, all right, because you've seen the core values and you know what they say. So what are our 4 core values at Mizzou? Very good. Okay, so we know, and thank you, Josh, very much. So you guys all know that our core values at Mizzou are respect, responsibility, discovery, excellence, however you want to say them. And we got them right there on the money spot on our campus, the signature spot on our campus, right by those columns, okay? So the key is, if you have a subsidiary that's going to reflect on this entire conglomerate, you better make sure that that subsidiary is reflecting those core values, is reflecting additional core values. They're the same. They're just said a little different way. When Dean Gable said, we talk about academic integrity, and we talk about social responsibility, and we talk about competitive excellence. Now, what does that mean? Quickly, and I'm going to tell you what that means quickly, because you can't just say it, you have to be able to picture it. And what we tell our kids, our men and women, is it does not matter. We tell our coaches how sweet a jump shot you have, how far you can throw a football, how fast a pitch you throw in softball, whatever that may be. If we don't cut it in the classroom, if we don't cut it as men and women and do things the right way, then you're not going to be able to compete and represent our institution, because you have to show respect, responsibility. You always have to be looking for ways to do things better, and you got to do it with excellence. And that's kind of what we try to do. Now, can that hold up 100% of the time? Absolutely not. We're dealing with human beings. We're dealing with people that certainly are going to make sometimes decisions that are contrary to what those values are. No different than our students on our campus, no different than our faculty, no different than some of our staff. Okay? But it's important for us as a subsidiary to continue to try to reflect those values. Now, I think it's interesting, we're going to try this. In these types of settings, you know, something's always going to go up and something's going to come down. So I kind of wanted to show you something, and Joe, I'm going to try to do this. See if I can. Hang on.
You are looking live at a sold-out Memorial Stadium in Columbia, where a new #1 has entered the fray. Tonight, #1 Oklahoma enters homecoming territory on Missouri Tiger turf. Two undefeated teams going head-to-head in a matchup of Big 12 division leaders. Low kickoff fielded by a short man on the 14-yard line. And that's McGaffey breaking free, has a seam and a crease. The kicker can't trip him up. Headed for the end zone. Will it be back-to-back weeks? Yes! A week ago, it was the Wisconsin Badgers. Tonight, it is the Missouri Tigers. 86 yards for a touchdown. And now they're threatening to go ahead. Intercepted. A horrendous screen. Alden Smith has got it, and he's got speed. Somebody's got Jones, but from behind, he is run down by Kenny Stills. Back here, they spread the field. Fire complete. Breaks out as Jackson. Touchdown. Missouri regains the lead. Another #1 has bitten the dust. Down goes Oklahoma. Now we take it to Times Square for the Ford wrap-up. Take it away, Robert Flores. Some scene here in Columbia.
So how many people were here last year to be able to see that? A lot more people than saw those core values. That is true. That is true. A lot more hands just went up than actually saw those core values on the side of the columns over there, on the north side of the columns. But I think it's interesting when you look at those types of things, and we talk about how athletics can cut across the swath of everything we're doing, provide a great advertising vehicle for what we try to do as an institution. That's a great example of that. And so when you see something going up like that, you certainly are, you're kind of beating your chest. Look at us and look what we've done. But what you hope in leadership roles is that you continue, though, to make sure that when you're doing that you're trying to do that in a way that's reflective, in a positive way about your conglomerate, and in a positive way about your core values. Because let me show you this next one. Okay, now this one isn't a video, but I'm going to show you something. How many people were here in 2005 or 2006 or would recall that we had an issue relative to men's basketball at the University of Missouri? Raise your hand. Okay, once again. A lot of you guys more than knew what those core values were on the other side of the quad. And this isn't about Quinn. This isn't about him. This is about, and he and I have a lot of respect for Quinn, and I worked with him. This is about an issue. What we talk about is what goes up sometimes has to come down. And in Columbia, Missouri, in 2005, we saw a lot of stuff relative to athletics, in particular basketball, driving it down. So where the brand was way up there last October with Oklahoma, I was here, and I was part of this when this was taking place back in 2005. And what it's centered around a basketball season going awry. It's centered around a major infractions case. It's centered around the dismissal or non-dismissal or direct dismissal of a basketball coach. It's centered around jailhouse tapes about presidents' wives calling inmates in jail and recording things. I mean, it was just amazing. Like, you couldn't have written a novel. You could never have thought of the things that were going on around there. So when you take a look at things in our industry about what goes up must come down, you have to always make sure that you're keeping yourself grounded and focusing on what the core values you have as an institution and as a conglomerate, and how you continue to apply those to the subsidiary. So I would hope that at Penn State, they're applying that in that way. I would hope at the University of Houston, where they're ranked, 9th or 10th in the country in football right now, that they're applying their core values. That I would hope that at Syracuse right now, they're applying their core values. And I would hope that whoever's number one in the country, what is it, LSU right now, that they're applying their core values. Because in our business, and in the conglomerates, in college athletics, everything that goes up at some point is going to come down. And the only thing that could be consistent is what you believe in and what you're trying to represent. So, using those examples and talking about our values and how we allow those things and our values should be driving us so that you're a value-driven organization, how does that help Mizzou position itself for the future? And this is leading in dynamic times, right? So the current consortium of who the subsidiary has been affiliated with, and really the conglomerate, has been the Big 12 Conference. And it's been the Big 12 Conference for 15 years, and before that it was the Big 8 Conference, and before that it was the Big 6 Conference, and before that it was the Missouri Valley Conference. So since the early 1900s, the University of Missouri has been associated in some way, shape, or form with a certain consortium, right? Now that consortium kind of expanded in 1995 to reflect what was called and what is called the Big 12 Conference. And that's what we've been associated with. And now we're seeing a shift go from the Big 12 Conference, and on July 1st, 2012, we'll go into the SEC. Now, how many people in here were aware that we were moving from the Big 12 to the SEC? Raise your hand. That's a hell of a lot more than knew what those values were on the quad. But I teased because what I'm saying to you is, if you go all the way back to this slide right there, the most important thing, you guys, of what we do here is we educate people, we provide tremendous research, we provide a greater quality of life for people in the state of Missouri, in our country, and in the world, right? We impact all of these people all over the place, but for some reason, that puppy, when that cuts across there, more people know about what's going on with your institution through that window called athletics. So, as we positioned in this situation, it became a national story, as you all know, and it became something that, as we announced on November the 6th of 2011 at the Student Center, that we were excited and we were proud and we were looking forward to making a shift relative to our relationship here. So when you're doing these types of analyses, you're trying to make decisions on what goes on when you win a huge football game in front of Oklahoma, what goes on when you have an NCAA major infractions case, what goes on when you have all these different types of decisions that you have to make. When you're leading in dynamic times, you have to make sure you're always coming back to your core values, and you have to make sure you're always coming back to what are some of the things that you're trying to base decisions on, right? Your core values and some key things. So in all of this, what we wanted to make sure is that we thought it was important in an analysis for an athletic program to understand, in the consortium that we're involved with, are we all being treated the same? So how many people are in here that have more than you in your family, children, like 3 brothers, 4 brothers, sisters, whatever? Okay. So when you guys are sitting at the table, yeah, I would think that you would hope that your parents or your loved ones or your guardians will be treating all those kids the same way at the table. You know what I mean? That when they're serving supper, that you might not get, a bowl of broth, and everybody else gets, a leg of lamb or, big chicken or whatever they may want. That you all are going to be treated the same. And as simple as that may seem, that's a critical component when you're taking a look at as far as being a part of a team, or part of a consortium. So we had to analyze that. How's everybody treated within that consortium? The second thing is, what do we put in, what do we hold out, and what are the rules? This really centered more around institutional property. Okay, so when we were taking a look, so I'm drilling down here into conference realignment, okay? So our point on all of that was, what is it that we're going to control? What's your institutional inventory, and what can you do with that? And what that means is, do I have advertising opportunities? Do I have trip opportunities? Do I have revenue opportunities? Whatever that may be, and what are the rules for all of us in the family by which they were able to play? So we had to be able to analyze that. We had to analyze who were the members of the family. when you're involved with a consortium, if you're in a partnership, and it should be a true equal partnership, right? And you understand what the value is that you bring to the partnership, and you understand what you can do with that value, you want to know who the other partners in your organization are. I would think all of us would want to know that, whether it was a family, whether it had to do with a partnership, a conglomerate, a consortium, whatever that may be. Do we grow our greater community? I think for us, we had to analyze to make sure how are we going to continue to grow the University of Missouri, our greater community. Remember, I take you all the way back to the wheel and the slide. How do you grow exposures for your alumni, exposure for recruiting students, exposure for your faculty, exposure for research, exposure for the state of Missouri? What do you do to try to utilize the consortium to be able to help you grow for a greater community? It really centers in around television deals, right? Because the biggest exposure aspect that an institution can have in our business is going to be, how are you going to be exposed through television, okay? And so what does that bring to the table? And then finally, married until death do us part. Is anybody in here married besides me? Okay, so we got about, maybe a fifth of us, maybe a sixth of us in here married. Okay, first of all, how many in here have never been married? Now you can raise your hand. Okay, very good. Now, for you people that have not been married that raised your hand, I'm going to give you an advice from a 53-year-old guy, okay? I'm going to tell you something, man. When you go to that altar and they kind of say, till death do you part, that's what they say. So if you're going to go through a Christian ceremony, I'm only talking about a Christian ceremony, if you're going through that one, which is the one I went through, they're going to ask you that question. They're going to ask you, till death do you part. And if you come up with that puppy and say, you know what, we're going to kind of hang out for 6 years, and then we're going to figure it out after that, that's probably, prenups aren't usually a good way to start the wedding night. So just remember that. Advice from a guy, okay, that has been through that in different forms and fashions. The prenups are usually not the right way to start off your wedding night. So what happened with us is those 5 points became central to everything that you try to do as you're analyzing your conglomerate, your consortium. Who do you want to be associated with? It all came back to those 5. And I've talked about this before in different settings, probably a much more visible one right now because I've tried to stay under the radar screen the last few months. But because when I talk to our staff, when I talk to Sarah and TJ about this or others, there's a lot of people that think, man, there's got to be more to it than that. Come on, tell us what it is. There's not. It's just like our core values. It's pretty simple. Respect, responsibility, discovery, and excellence. That's what it's all about. If everything comes back to that, if everything comes back to these 5 things on a partnership or a consortium that you're going to be involved with, it answers itself. There's not a lot of magic to that, right? So if you can be able to apply those standards, those values, these questions towards what you're trying to do, it helps you drive a decision. So in those times of dynamic leadership, these are the types of things that you have to turn to. What are your values? What are you trying to base your decisions on? And that's what we try to do. We've seen those core values and those things play out in lots of different ways, but in this one, this is a very public way and one that created national awareness and international awareness for the Tigers. So, at the end of the day, this is what happened on November the 6th.
Yeah, congratulations to both of you.
Thank you, Liz.
When you think about academics, you think about culture, you think about athletic commitment. Missouri certainly has all of the elements that our institutions have.
Well, I think they're going to look forward to some tremendous athletic competition in all sports. I think from top to bottom, the SEC is recognized probably as the premier league in the country competitively. So kind of a big celebration, and that's kind of what resulted from utilizing your core values and utilizing those 5 components when you're trying to make decisions on what you're going to do. So when we talk about leading in dynamic times, and that was the title of the presentation, you guys, and what I've been trying to do is apply decision-making and things that we think through in leadership capacities, whatever that may be, in different types of atmospheres. The most recent, which is this move to the SEC. But you come back to your values. How's that driving it? You come back to the baseline measurements that you want to compare yourself to, and then you use those to help you drive your decisions. So leading in dynamic times, it can be whether you've got an issue with a men's basketball program in an NCAA major infractions case. It could be that you just knocked off the #1 team in the country. It could be that you are losing a basketball coach to the University of Arkansas. It could be that you're hiring a basketball coach from the University of Miami. It could be that you get a call from yahoosports.com. I didn't know they existed as far as a reporting agency, but I do now, right, on August the 15th. It could be that you get a call or a text at 6:30 in the morning that says, one of your folks has a DWI and you got to deal with all these things. What I'm saying to you, those are dynamic times, but those things happen for us all the time. That could happen the minute I walk out of here. But as long as from a decision-making standpoint, you come back to your core values, and if you come back to those principles by which you're trying to make your decisions on, everything will take care of itself. But in leadership roles, there are 3 things, actually 4, that people are looking for from their leaders. 4 things. Okay, from a character standpoint, that's one of them. They're looking for character. You don't have to have a title to have character. You don't have a title. You don't have to have a title to have confidence. You don't have a title. You don't have to have a title to have courage. And you don't have to have a title to have compassion. When you're leading in dynamic times, people want to see character, they want to see courage, they want to see confidence, and they want to see compassion. And what they want from their leaders, they want direction, they want to have trust, they want to have hope, and at the end of the day, they want to have results. So those kind of things that we're talking about right there lead us to talking about leading in dynamic times and applying that to a highly visible entity at the University of Missouri, a national entity, an international entity in some ways, and making sure that the decisions that go on around that recognize values and the points that you're trying to go through and also the characteristics you're looking for in leadership. So that was 30 minutes. I'm doing okay right now? All right, so I knew I had an hour, but I figured if I talked for an entire hour, I'd get shot up here, or I'd start losing some people. The one thing I would tell you, and Joe, is it okay for me to open it up, or did you want to?
Please do.
Why don't you go ahead and say something?
I'll do that. First, thank you for your insights today. It's been a pleasure. We do have time, obviously, for a few questions, and Andrew and Charles are running the mics for us. So, Charles, if you don't mind running this side, Andrew this side, we would like to open it up to Q&A, and obviously we encourage our students to ask most of the questions. So. Anybody would like to start? Yes, back here in the hat.
Now, is that a Cubs hat you got on there? Okay, I'm just checking. Okay, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Jordan. I'm from Chicago, obviously, and I'm a sophomore in journalism here. My question is, how did you take the core values that you referenced throughout your presentation and apply them when you found out about Gary Pinkel and when you heard about the Nevin Shapiro thing? How do you actually take those core values and literally put them to work in these situations?
I think the first thing you do, in no particular order, I think the first thing you have to do is step back and take a breath before you apply any of those values. Again, the worst thing that you can do in any type of leadership position is overreact. I think, first of all, you have to be able to take a breath. You have to analyze and take a look at what you have that you're dealing with. And then when you do that, then I think what you have to do is completely envelop those 4 things that we talked about. The first being, okay, respect. I think when you're dealing with an issue, okay, let's talk about the first one with Coach, all right, for a minute. I think the very first thing you want to do is you want to be respectful of the people that you're dealing with. You want to be respectful of the issue, and you want to be respectful of your institution. The second thing is that you have to be able to say, how is this reflected responsibly on who we are and what we're trying to do? Right? So you want to take a look at what's the responsibility along with this? How is this reflected that? What responsibilities are harnessed by people that have been impacted by this or by the individual, him or herself? I think the third thing then is from a discovery standpoint, when you talk about that, you want to be able to say, okay, discovering, do we have any like situations like this? Okay. Where are there some other like situation maybe around the country? How have they applied that? How is this applied to students? Right? In our case, student athletes really, but also students. And how do you got to discover all of this kind of stuff. And then finally, you want to make sure you're doing it in an excellent standpoint. And I'll tell you, so that's actually what I did, okay, at 6:45 a.m. on that morning, is you're trying to run through that. It doesn't take you an hour to run through all that stuff. But you've got to be able to step back, take a breath, get a grip on it, and apply those principles towards it. Now, when you talk about the excellence component of anything you're doing, whether it's a yahoosports.com or whether it's anything, you guys, good things or challenging things, is that fourth piece, the excellence, really comes back to this as well, too. The number one most important thing on any time you're making a decision on anything that happens on this campus, the number one most important thing is the institution. Number one absolutely is the university. Whatever decisions you're making, you want to make sure the number one most important thing is the institution. Number two, that's going to be your program, your department, whatever that may be. And number three, in this order, would be the student or the staff member and how they're being impacted. I mean, that's the way we've approached it. Whether you agree with that or not, that's the way we've approached that. For a person that learned a lesson back from 2005, my decision-making centered around what was, I was looking out what was best, I thought, for the student at that time. And when I made those decisions back in 2005, it greatly impacted negatively our institution and our department. I learned a big lesson there. And so what I've tried to do is take those things that you learn, how you can apply those core values towards it, and the mistakes that you've made, and try to make sure that you are discovering better ways to do it. So that's a long answer. But was that okay? That's kind of what we did. That's what I did. Okay. How about some other questions? Right back here.
Right there. How you doing? I had a question. With the move to...
What's your name?
I'm Adam from Chicago. Also, with the move to the SEC and an obvious cultural and competitive differences from the Big 12, do you see yourself having to adjust your style of leadership or adapt your core values to this new conference, or do you see yourself sticking with standards and ways you've conducted yourself in the Big 12?
I'll take that in reverse order. I think as far as our brand of who we are as an institution, and as an organization, I don't think you ever should adjust that, no matter where you are. So whether we were in Paris, France doing something, or we were in the SEC, whatever our values are, whatever our brand is, and whatever we've built our model upon, that you'd never waver from that, regardless of other neighbors that you may have in the area. I think that's a huge mistake if you would ever adjust. From a leadership standpoint, for me, you probably won't see me change too much. I think the only thing that Sarah and TJ may say that I'm changing a little bit is I need to step my game up a little bit more. I do. I'm the first person to say that, and I think that all of us as teammates, we all have to step our game up a little bit more too. But I think our people are geared towards that. They're challenged to that. They want to step up their game a little bit. So I don't think that really changes the leadership style. I just think it maybe just picks it up just a little bit in some things. So. We got a question down here. You're doing a great job with the microphone, I think.
Hey, Coach. My name is Bobby Hoffman. I'm a freshman in the Cornell Leadership Program from St. Louis, Missouri. And I was wondering, kind of in a similar question, how do you see your department being able to capitalize on their core values with this shift to the SEC?
Well, I think that the question was, you guys, and you probably heard it, was how do you capitalize on what we do, our brand, our core values as an institution by this move? I think it gives you a greater audience to be able to promote who we are as an institution. I really do. I mean, the footprint, the television contracts, the opportunities for newer contexts, newer communities, new areas that we're going to be recruiting from, not student athletes, but recruiting students from. When you open up all these markets, I think you take that. It's a tremendous opportunity to communicate who we are as an institution, what our values are, what we're all about in Missouri, what we're all about at the university, and what our expectations are for people that when they come to our community or come to our campus. And so I think what you do is you take a platform which has been big time. Big 12 has provided us a big time platform to communicate that, but I'm telling you that platform just stepped up a little bit, and as an institution, it's phenomenal to be able to have that exposure in the southeastern part of the country and actually nationally more. So you use that as a great vehicle, an advertising vehicle to help you promote and let people know who we are as an institution.
Hi, my name is Benjamin. I'm from Washington, Missouri. With the move to the SEC, there's been some criticism from schools such as Kansas with that decision. Do you feel the need to address that in any way, or do you feel as though since you've incorporated those core values in your decision that you are on the right and then just keep going forward with with where we are?
I think that the way you address those, whether it was Kansas or anyone, is you just do it in a respectful manner. I think you do it in a respectful manner, and you're transparent with it. You talk to people about it. You recognize that you may be disappointed. We're leaving our family here, and we're going to a different family. But the reality of that is that we thought we had to make the decision which was best for the institution, and we based those decisions on these things that we've talked about. But I think with KU, I mean, they're our arch rival, right? And we want to beat them every time we're on the field or in the swimming pool or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, we have great respect for Kansas, and you would want to be respectful to them, and you would want to be compassionate. But you'd also want to say, hey, look, we're going to make the best decision for Mizzou, and this is the decision we made. This is why we made it, and we wish you the best of luck as we go forward. That's how we try to handle it. But no, there's people that are disappointed. We understand that.
Maybe over here to Curtis, perhaps, and then we'll go to Amanda next.
Howdy, my name is Curtis, and I appreciated your...
Where are you from?
Springfield.
Okay, very good.
Ish. I appreciated your conglomerate analogy, but when conglomerates move to a new market or a new territory, like from the Big 12 to the SEC, that requires a lot of new capital, and that requires our budget to increase dramatically. How is the athletics department pursuing that infusion of capital to compete in this new market?
That's Curtis has a great point there, you guys, because again, in order to be able to, if we're going to ramp it up from a leadership standpoint, ramping it up for all these different things, we have to ramp it up budget-wise, facility-wise, and on and on. Our efforts with regards to private donations have increased dramatically over the last couple, and also the response has been very positive too, which is good. But I also think you're trying to take a look at different ways to be able to gain a greater market share, greater revenue base through ticket sales, annual giving, major gifts. The television contracts will bring in some more resources as well too. And as you see those now, and you also have anticipated revenues, then what you're trying to do is you're having to make sure though that you're not waiting completely for all those to come in, but that you're going ahead and stepping forward to go ahead and start investing some of that current new capital into anticipated capital so that you can be able to get your areas ramped up a little bit. And we'll be doing that over the course of the next couple of years. But we've anticipated that. So.
Hi, my name is Amanda Riley. I'm from Jefferson City, Missouri.
Would that be, Jeff, are you a J or would that be a Crusader?
I'm a Crusader.
Okay, very good. I just needed to ask. Okay.
It's a good question. Okay. From a leadership standpoint, when you're managing and leading a lot of different people in a lot of different organizations, you've got 20 different athletic programs, sports. How do you keep equality into the mix? Because obviously different athletics, different sports bring in more revenue, less revenue for the university. How do you make that balance for the students?
I think that's a great question about trying to make sure that the family is all treated the same, right? So you have 20 sports, 20 head coaches, basically, 20 heads of organizations. Some of those heads of the organization are like the Heisman Trophy candidate running back, right? So we go to football. That person's probably going to score more touchdowns, going to bring in more money, whatever, than maybe the offensive guard. But what you want to make sure is that you realize that we're going to treat you all the same, recognizing the tailback's going to probably bring in a little bit more money, okay? But we want to make sure we treat everybody the same, and you can't just say that, then you have to support them at that. So with us, when we take a look at all of our sport programs, whether it's a new practice facility for wrestling, a new practice facility we just opened for gymnastics, different types of things, but at the same time doing new field turf for football, that you're obviously providing resources for all of your sport programs, for all your students, so that they can see they're just as, now they may not bring as much money, but they're just as valuable as someone else around the table. And initially you do that verbally, but the only way, especially, and you guys know that, the only way you can back that up is by doing it. And so over the course of those times we've been together, we've been able to show our kids that we can do that. Does that answer your question, Andy? Okay.
Right here on the front row.
Hi, Mr. Alden. My name is Ryan Strumpf. I'm also from Jefferson City, Missouri. I'm a Crusader, too. So
Very good. Very good.
My question is, in an answer to a previous question, you mentioned stepping your game up. How is the athletic department going to do that with the move to the SEC?
Well, I think what you have to do is we've got to continue to build an SEC type of vision. It's a vision thing, okay? The tangible side, Curtis, that you were talking about, there's tangible stuff here too, right? You know, what the stadium looks like, how big this is, you know, how much money you have to recruit and whatever. All that kind of stuff is tangible. But really, I think the thing beyond that is you have to have what we call a shared vision, right? An SEC vision. That all of us have to understand that by stepping this up, what does that mean? Well, that means, well, what do you mean by that? Well, that means that when we go to away games, that we don't have 700 fans that go to Vanderbilt. You know, we've got 4,700 fans. Why? Because when Vanderbilt comes to Missouri, there's not going to be 700, there's going to be 4,700. You know, stuff like, that's a vision, okay? So how do you step that up? And you got to keep sharing that vision. And for us, over the course of the next 6 months, through our new digital network, the Mizzou network, in case you guys didn't know about that, on a weekly basis, we're going to be educating our fan base and our supporters, our student athletes, everyone, about what is that vision, what does it look like, what does that mean? Because you can say this is what you want, but you got to show people that. And so what we'll be doing is we'll be just slowly, methodically, and directly just educating people what that vision means. That means that you show up to games early. That means we don't have pass-outs at our games. That means that we're going to recruit at a different section of the country, so we need to be able to maintain and build bigger relationships in Atlanta while we still got to maintain relationships in Dallas and Houston and Chicago, you know? And so all those different types of things are part of a vision, that what you want to be able to do is analyze the tangible side, but the intangible is what is it going to look like? And that's what we have to be doing, and we are doing right now over the course of the next several months. Our fan base, our student athletes, our coaches, our campus, our faculty, all those people.
I think Eric has the next one, and then we'll go to the back. Actually, we need to go on this side, so we'll go here, yeah, and then we'll go to the back. Great, thank you.
Hello, Eric Stiege from Wisconsin. So once a Badger, now a Tiger. So
very good.
Would be very interested to hear your perspectives on integrating the core values when you're making hiring searches, or hiring of new coaches, and also training your current staff, and how you do both of those.
You know, it's an interesting question, because I was asked that question when we hired Gary Pinkel, or we asked that question when we hired Aaron Earlywine for softball, or Frank Haith, or Mike Anderson, or Robin Pinchton, and people. And correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, because Sarah was involved with me on a few of these searches, but we just simply applied those values when we were going out and recruiting coaches to be in our pool. So what we meant by that is the first thing everybody's going to look at is a record, because that's what people want to measure. Well, how have they won? Well, that's not the first thing we look at. The first thing we're looking at is, number one, what's their character like? What's their integrity like? Do we have someone here that reflects the values that we have as an institution? What I mean by that is, if we got people that are, let me just say, just not representing the values of our institution, at least what they've shown publicly and what we hear about privately, that's probably not someone we want to look at, regardless of how many games they've won. Okay? The second thing we want to know is, how have they done academically? Okay, what are their kids done like academically? And if they haven't been a head coach, what's their program done academically? The third thing we want to know about is, what's their communication skills? I mean, how are they going to represent us when they're out speaking and they're out recruiting? The fourth thing will be the recruiting, okay, the recruiting base, where they're at. The fifth would be how willing they are to take on the role of being the face of, I mean, come on, guys. Coach Pinkel's the face not of just our football program and our institution. In a lot of ways, he's the face of the state of Missouri. And that may not be fair to him, but he is, right? So how willing are you to take on that type of responsibility? And then finally, tell me about your wins and losses. Because we figure if we can apply those first things, and you hit it on all of those, and you come to the end, that winning stuff could take care of itself. That's how we do it. Is that okay?
I'm Mr. Alden, right here. My name is Anders. I'm a freshman from Seattle, Washington. And my question was in regards to your slide with the 5 points and talking about the family being treated equally. Is there something specific that you can talk about that you maybe saw with the Big 12 where you said one or two major issues, this is why we're going to the SEC, we like this better about the SEC, or we don't like this about the Big 12?
I think if you looked at, the question really centers around a couple of things. First of all, the inequality that was exhibited in our league in the Big 12 for so long. You know, people shared revenue differently. There were different decisions made on bowl alignments, all these other kind of stuff. You know, you were kind of conditioned to to be used to that. The other part of it is over the course of a year and a half, even though you had a lot of people that were saying we're all in, we're all together, 7 of our institutions in our league, 7 looked at different homes publicly. Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas, Texas Tech, Nebraska, Colorado, Texas A&M. 7, right, over a year and a half. And so those 2 things in particular, when you're saying people are being treated, let's say, equally, it's not only about how you kind of share things, but it's also about, okay, so it's okay to be going and doing all of these kind of things out here, but it's not okay for someone else to do that. And that's just treated differently. So that's what I was probably getting to on that point. Did that answer your question? Okay.
We have time for one more question. I think it'll...
Hi, Mr. Alden. My name is Tori Chamberlain. I'm originally from San Diego. And my question is, when it comes to the decision-making process, not only like the move to the SEC, but going back even to the hiring of Frank Haith, there's obviously a lot of outside opinions from fans and alumni and things like that. How much influence do outside factors like that actually have on a decision as opposed to the internal collaboration and opinions of people on the staff?
Well, Tori, that's a great question, because I think that the dynamics of what we do in our business have changed dramatically over the last 10 years, really over the last 5 years, really over the last year. The advent of blogs have created, I mean, there are more people out there that are opinion makers now, well, not just blogs, other things, than we've ever seen before. And so initially, I think you want to be able to step back and say, it's not going to matter what all those people say. By goodness, we're going to do just this, and this is what we're going to do. I think you're naive if you do that. I think you need to be sensitive to the pulse of the communities that you're serving, all those people that were on the wheel. You need to be able to listen to those people. You need to be able to digest it. You need to be able to filter it. And at the end of the day, those values are going to drive the decision that you're going to make. But if, in fact, you're going to make decisions that are contrary towards what a lot of the, other people outside on that wheel are suggesting to you, you need to be prepared, A, to explain why you made the decision you made, and you need to be prepared to be able to understand that some of that is probably going to come back from a negativity standpoint. But if you allow those core values to help drive your decision, it gives you more confidence as a leader, right, to be able to take that courageous step and doing that in a way with good character that allows you to be able to hopefully feel good about those decisions that you made. I've seen way too many people, not only in our industry, you guys, but in higher education and athletics, but really in industry as well. They try to make decisions that they think initially are just going to please like these people because they got people yelling at them and they haven't really done a really good analysis on that, and they can ultimately end up making a bad decision if they don't go back to their core values. Jim Collins talks about that a lot in his books. You guys all know that John Maxwell talks about that. There's a lot of writers out there that talk about making sure that you listen to the influencers, or maybe they aren't influencers, but the public, but keep coming back to allow it to drive your core values to make your decisions. Is that okay, Tori? Great.
Thank you. Before everyone departs, I want to thank those who provided valuable assistance for this Vaughn Executive in Residence lecture, including the staff of the Advancement Office, as well as the Academic Support Center and Recess Incorporated Photography. Mr. Alden, would you please join me?
Yes. Yes.
As a small token of our appreciation for your time and efforts, we'd like to present you with this plaque that reads, in appreciation, Mike Alden, Vaughn Executive in Residence Lecture, December 1st, 2011.
Oh, Joe, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. Can I ask them just a couple more questions before I leave? Would that be okay? Okay, before I leave, I've got to ask you a couple questions. So you must raise your hand. All right. You ready? Thank you, Joe. Gang, stay with me here, buddy. Okay. Okay, so first one is for an extra large t-shirt. You must raise your hand. You must raise your hand. Okay. I would like to know the name of all 14 schools in the Southeastern Conference. Now, only because you raised it as vehemently as you did. My buddy from Chicago right here with the Cubs hat on. You got to stand up for this one, brother. Pressure's on you. Okay, all 14 schools.
Arkansas, Alabama, South Carolina, Mississippi, Mississippi State, Florida, Georgia, Auburn, Texas A&M, Missouri, Vanderbilt, Kentucky,
Who did he miss? What was it, LSU? Give him a round of applause. Very good. Okay, you guys got that. Pass it back. Okay. Second question. Double XL t-shirt. It's the best. I love these things. Go have a pizza and put the t-shirt on. Not a problem. Okay, so the second question I have for you, all right? The most photographed place in the entire state of Missouri is in St. Louis. It's the Arch. All these people stand under the arch, they get their picture taken. Second most photographed place in the whole state is right here in Columbia. It's right on this campus. I want to know the second most photographed place in the state and how many of them there are. Second most photographed place, how many of them there are. What's your name? Taylor? Where are you from, Taylor? Okay, Fort Worth. Second most photographed place is? She goes to the 6 columns. Give her a round of applause. Very good. All right. Third question I have for you is this. I want to know the name of the chancellor of the University of Missouri. I want to know his wife's name. And I want to know his home state. You wonder why we went to the SEC? Okay, this is going to help you. No, I'm joking. No, I know there's some reporters in here. That's a joke. Don't be saying that. Okay, so the name of the chancellor, his wife's name, and his home state. What's your name? Allie, where are you from? Okay, St. Charles, Missouri. Okay, name of the chancellor is? Brady. His wife's name? His home state is? Give her a round of applause. Wow. Jeez. Last question for an SEC hat. How about that? God dang. All right, very good. SEC hat. Let's go with this. All right, I want to know the name of the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference. Then he will love that I asked this question as well, too. He's got a Mizzou sweatshirt on right there, right? What's your name? Where are you from, Steve? From New Jersey. Okay. Give me the name of the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference. Mike Slive. Give him a round of applause. I'll get this to you, okay? So, look, I'm turning this back to Joe to close this up, but I would tell you this. On behalf of Brady Deaton, that's my boss, okay? He's a great guy. And all of us that work at Mizzou, thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to come and visit with you today. Appreciate you being at Mizzou. You know, everybody in here, nobody stuck a gun to your head, said you had to come to Mizzou or had to work here. You all do that because you love this place as well, too. So we appreciate you being here. Appreciate everything you do for the Tigers. M-I-Z?
Z-O-U.
Remember, we got to step our game up when we go in the SEC? All right. M-I-Z?
Z-O-U.
Much better. Good job, you guys. Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you.